want to point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I want to hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 496th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell, who is not here. He is at home in the flesh.
But he's in the flesh still.
That's right. So this is all material that comes from my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. If you scroll down on the screen, you can see a link to a different blog that Tom and I use, but there are links to all the articles from there. If there's also a file that you can download that has links to the original articles, or you can go to geoharvey.com and click on the calendar to get to the date that you want to see. And then...
Some of these articles are very good. They're very well written, very informative.
Yeah, indeed.
I'm trying to call your attention to some of the better ones.
Yeah.
At any time, if the headline intrigues you, look it up, because some of these are very in-depth and well-informed.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're going to start out with a picture of a school bus.
Is that what that is?
I think it is.
Looks like a school bus to me.
It's
got no grill. Notice that?
Yes, I noticed that it has no grill.
Isn't that interesting? I wonder why.
Okay, this is from Clean Technica, and Tom, you have a title for it, I know.
I do. I can find it even. Biden-Harris administration, 389 school districts getting nearly $1 billion for the EPA's Clean School Bus Program.
Yeah.
That's good news.
Under President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law, nearly $1 billion of the EPA's Clean School Bus Program rebate competition was awarded to 389 school districts in 50 states, Washington, D.C., and several tribes and U.S. territories.
Well, it's a step in the right direction, that's for sure.
It is indeed. We've pointed it out before. The electric school buses give the children the ability to stay out of the diesel fumes, which diesel.
Well, that's a very good point. They hardly ever mention it.
Yeah, and those diesel fumes are toxic.
Absolutely.
So, you have more on that one, Tom?
Well, let's see. I do and I don't. I was just going to point out that electric buses are an ideal fit for school buses.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they sit all day idle while the kids are in school, and they can be charging.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Absolutely. So our next item is we have a picture of
It's pictures of a wind farm.
That's what it is. And this is from Electrek.
GM says it will power all of its U.S. sites with clean energy by 2025.
That's interesting.
Coming up pretty soon.
And this is General Motors. This is big. General Motors says it has deals to power all of its U.S. sites with clean energy by 2025. GM's clean energy portfolio now includes sourcing agreements from 16 renewable energy plants. GM reports that the portfolio has produced over $75 million of positive cash flow since 2017. So they're making money on this, or at least they're losing less.
With alternative energy getting cheaper.
Yeah.
This is a gloved hand fit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, they've had experience with it already. The thing that's kind of noteworthy about this is that they're saying all U.S. sites. And, they're not saying office buildings. And GM has factories and warehouses and a lot of stuff going on there.
Well, GM's not exactly a small company.
The last I looked, it was fairly large, yeah. So
It's up there.
it's up there.
Let's take a look at a view of a liquid natural gas carrier.
All right.
We saw one last weekend. It was a little bit different, but the thing they got in common is those globes.
Sometimes they have straight sides that go along those globes, and it looks like they've got it's like the globes have got a roof that comes all the way down to the deck. So sometimes they look.
They're covered. They're still globes.
They're still globes. And this is an item from CNN, and it is fascinating. We talked about it last week, and now we've got it for you.
Europe has so much natural gas that prices just dipped below zero. They're paying you to take the gas.
Yeah. The European Union gas storage facilities are close to full. Tankers carrying liquefied natural gas are lining up at the ports, unable to unload their cargoes.
You're sitting out there.
Yeah, Europe now has more natural gas than it knows what to do with, so much in fact that spot prices briefly went negative earlier this week. This is kind of an extension of the war in Ukraine.
Yes, it is.
It looked like Europe was not going to have enough natural gas, so they started scrambling to get supplies. And what did they find? They found that they could get the supplies. And
well, it's interesting because natural gas it's a fossil fuel.
Yeah.
So this is not a renewable.
No, it's not, and it's there are people who have thought of it as a bridge to fossil fuels, but I don't think it's very good. In fact, I think it's kind of bad at that.
Well, unfortunately, the fossil fuels are all spoken for by large companies.
Yeah.
So it's all about that funny-looking letter S with the lines through it.
Yes, I think it is. Okay, do you have more on this, Tom?
I don't think so. I think we ought to move along, see if we can get something else to talk about.
Okay, we've got
a picture of a wind farm. Well, this is a nice wind farm.
Yeah, this is beautiful.
Got any idea where that is?
I think it's in Spain. It's Aconia Energia, and I believe that's a Spanish company. But
I looked it up on the article. I couldn't figure out where it was.
Well, this wind farm, I don't know where it is.
It's a good-sized wind farm, that's for sure.
These European utilities build wind farms in other countries, so this could be, in England for
anywhere.
all. Yeah. Okay, this is from Renews.
UK wind power sets new generation record.
Yeah, the UK's onshore.
That's from Renews, by the way.
Yeah, the UK's onshore and offshore wind farm set an electricity generation record of 19,936 megawatts, which is basically about 20 gigawatts of electricity, covering 52.2% of UK demand. The new record.
That's 1.5.
Yeah. The new record was set between 11:30 a.m. and 12 noon on the 26th of October, beating the previous record of 19,916. So it's 20 megawatts more.
Now, this is just for the UK.
This is just for the UK. That previous record was set on the 25th of May. Now, of course, they're constantly adding new wind turbines. And so these records are just set up to be broken quickly, in fact.
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the UK is just, they've got that North Sea there.
Yeah.
They're just covering it with wind farms.
Yes, the North Sea and the Irish Sea, too, as a matter of fact. They're putting the wind farms wherever they can. They want them to be close to land because that reduces the problems with transmission lines and putting them in and so forth.
Well, we're missing a boat here because we got the potential just off the Atlantic coast to power the whole country.
I know that, and we will get back to that in the near future. So,
I hope so.
Well, I mean, we've got articles that we have to talk about that are
Definitely.
About that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Should we go on?
Move along here. Yeah, we got a picture of a funny-looking blue house here. It's a White House, actually.
It's a
blue picture.
If it were a white background.
Backup power.
Yeah. This is from Clean Technica.
How electric vehicles may be able to provide backup power for homes.
Yes, GM announced a new business arm called GM Energy this month. It is set to provide bidirectional EV charging units that can send power back to the homes and to the electric grid. This is from a report from Business Insider. GM...
So they can take energy or they can send it back.
That's right. GM, meanwhile, is set to partner with PG&E, that's Pacific Gas and Electric, on a pilot project next year. So they're putting this in California.
Well, PG&E is a big utility.
It sure is. Yeah. They were the ones... They were...
Know what you're doing.
They do. And some of the time. They're the ones that got into huge trouble because their transmission lines were sagging and started fires a couple of years ago. And
That's right. Yeah, they did.
It looked like they were going to go bust. I don't remember what the outcome of that was. But, PG&E is still around. They may have reorganized. They may have just taken out heavy-duty loans to take care of that. But
Well, I think they're watching their forests a little bit more closely.
I think they are, yeah. And one of the things about renewable energy is that you can make it local, which means you don't need those transmission lines, which means that you don't need to worry about starting fires from the transmission lines out in the woods.
Well, it's a new, how would you call it?
New way of doing things.
New ways. Well, that wasn't the word I was looking for, but it'll work.
Okay.
Well, we got another picture coming up here of some smog, but the biggest thing that looks like smog, I think, is steam.
I think you may be right, although that big thing that, the cloud that's coming out of that stack on the right and going leftward across that is smoke. That's, that's a smokestack, not a scrub, not a cooling tower. Yeah, but there's a lot of steam in that picture. This is from CNN.
And I quote, "The peak in global fossil fuel emissions is just around the corner."
This is an interesting article. And, well, let me read the synopsis. Global fossil fuel emissions are expected to peak in 2025. That's just 3 years from now, as countries commit to spend heavily on low-carbon fuels. The International Energy Agency said in its annual World Energy Outlook report that Russia's assault on Ukraine had the potential to hasten the global transition. So
that's got a lot of people, well, first of all, wondering, but second of all, preparing.
Yeah, and
Russia's playing games over there, and the Europeans are worried.
Well, the Europeans are worried, and there's good reason to worry about what's going on with Russia. They keep, especially when you consider that they're talking about using nuclear bombs. This is not a good situation. What are the chances that they would use nuclear bombs? I think most of the experts are saying pretty low. They're not likely to do that. Nevertheless,
well, if they do that, then we would be entitled to reply, and I don't think they want that to happen.
No, they don't, and we don't have to use nuclear bombs to reply to that. And
no, we don't have to, but we could.
But we could have conventional bombs on cruise missiles that would just take out one site after another in Russia. And the situation with Russia is, I don't think Vladimir Putin really knows what's going on any better than I do, to tell you the truth.
I think you're right. This guy is a mystery.
Well,
you call him a bully, and he is, but he's also a screwball.
He's apparently badly informed by his subordinates. And the reason is because they're afraid to tell him the truth. So they tell him things that are not true. That's not a way to...
He knows what he wants to hear.
No, but it's not a way to win a war. So,
sure.
Okay.
Well, let's take a picture of this. Take a look at this truck here.
Yeah.
They got a nice video on it. Well, let's talk about that as it comes up.
Yeah. This is from...
2022 Ford ETransit. There's a video review.
Right.
It's worth looking at.
This is from Clean Technica. Ford has been on a roll recently when it comes to electrifying its vehicle lineup. Now Ford is making one of the most popular commercial vehicles as an EV. It's called the ETransit. We recently had a chance, we here being the people at Clean Technica, had a chance to check out the 2022 cargo van guise of the ETransit and learn more about its impressive features.
This is interesting. That truck there is $50,000 and up.
Yes.
That's not cheap.
No, it's not.
No, nothing's cheap anymore, really.
Nothing.
In vehicles.
Nothing is cheap unless you're looking to buy a new car in China.
That's true.
Then it's cheap. Yeah.
Well, Ford is making one of its most popular commercial vehicles as an EV. I think you said that.
Right, I did. And this vehicle doesn't have to look like a delivery van. You can get it in a whole bunch of different shapes.
Well, it's interesting. The video takes a very in-depth look at this van. And one of the things they do is interesting. They open up the back door.
Yes.
And against the wall by the back door, there's a little box.
Yes.
And you open up the cover of the box, and what do you see? An outlet looks just like the outlet you got in your house.
Yes.
You can plug anything into it.
Yeah, that's right. And it's got a lot of electricity in there. It's a several-day supply for a house.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
So.
And they're trying to talk contractors into doing it because
Yes.
they can power a job site with what's in the truck.
Yes, instead of using gasoline-powered tools or a generator on site. This is basically noise-free, smoke-free, vibration-free. It's a pretty good deal.
Well, it's a step in the right direction for sure.
Absolutely it is.
Well, let's move along here. We got a picture of another LNG ship.
LNG ship. This is from
This one, you can't see the domes.
Yes. This is from oilprice.com.
IEA, quote, the rapid growth of natural gas demands it's coming to an end.
This is important. A world...
This is a little tricky here.
Yeah, a World Energy Outlook scenario from the IEA, that's the International Energy Agency, based on the current government policies, has global demand for every fossil fuel showing a peak. Quote, one of the effects of the current crisis is that the era of rapid growth in global gas emissions is drawing to a close, end quote. That's from
That's interesting.
That's from Fatih Birol, who is the executive director of the IEA. Yeah, it means...
I've seen some stuff by him before. He knows what he's talking about.
That's what he does. International Energy Agency, he's the executive director. The IEA, by the way, is a UN-based agency. So this is, this has got
some teeth in it.
Yeah, I don't know that it's got teeth, but it's got a lot of work behind it. Let me put it that way. And people pay attention. So
let's move on.
Yeah, I love this next picture. This is
it is a nice picture. This is a nice picture. I love that. I'd love to take a little vacation right there.
Yeah, so would I. This reminds me of so many villages that I went through when I was in England and especially in Wales. But when I was there were still these farm buildings and so forth with thatched roofs. Well, there still are, but not as many today. Thatching is a very expensive way to do things today. Anyway, this is from BBC, and you have a title.
Highland the Highland Haven, insulated from rising energy prices.
Right, and the picture here is the picture of the village that is actually the subject of this article. Hydroelectric schemes are not unusual in Scotland. Knoydart, and I don't know that I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm trying. On the west coast of Scotland is different, however. It is so remote that it is not connected to the national grid, meaning prices here are not dictated by the wholesale cost of more expensive forms of energy, such as gas. This is the situation in Scotland is kind of crazy.
Well, it's interesting. significant part. This is big. It's the whole area north of Loch Ness.
Yes. Okay. But the thing that's happening in much of the UK, at least in Scotland, but I think all of the UK connected with the grid, is that the price of electricity is tied by law to the price of natural gas. And that meant that when the natural gas price went through the roof after the invasion of Ukraine, the price of electricity went through the roof, even if it came from offshore wind turbines or something like that.
So now it's going through the floor.
Yeah, and of course the thing is, these people who live in this little village, you know, there might not be a Walmart there, but it's a little village. I would bet that every single person in it knows every other person in it, but they have their own
Probably all related.
Yeah, they might be. They have their own hydro scheme, which goes back to years and years ago when, you know, they got their electricity.
They need electricity. This is the way to get it.
Yeah, and the price of electricity is pretty much the same from one year to the next. Okay, we're up to Sunday, October 30th, unless you've got more on that.
No, I can't dance. I think we'll get a nice one to look at. We got a picture of America's largest offshore wind farm.
Yeah.
It's pretty poor.
America has 2 offshore wind farms. One of them has 5 turbines. The other one has 2. And this is like a huge chunk of...
This is ridiculous.
And that's the point of the article. This is from Clean Technica.
The demented gift American politicians have handed to China.
Yeah. Once America was great. We had a political system that was the hope of the world. We also had the best science with greatest researchers finding the best ways to do things. But we walked away from our greatness, and now the huge renewables market is dominated by China. This is a matter of American politicians basically saying, we don't want to get involved in renewable energy. And so we didn't get involved in renewable energy, and the huge renewable marketplace, which is probably the biggest business opportunity ever to present itself to mankind, was just, we didn't get involved.
Well, as the article headline says, we gave a gift to China.
Right. And there are examples that are used here. One of them is electric buses, which we have talked about a lot. And then there were a couple of others too. It's just a matter of...
The Chinese are going crazy building electric cars in China.
Yeah.
They're not leaving China, but they're making huge numbers.
I think the majority of cars that are sold in China are electric now. I might be mistaken, but it is a huge percentage. And China has the second largest car market in the world, which is kind of mind-boggling for me anyway, because I'm used to China, you know, when growing up and in college and after college, China was a place where people put on conical hats and worked in rice paddies. You know,
there's a lot of Chinese.
There's a lot of Chinese, and the Chinese economy has grown in a manner that is almost unbelievable. And,
absolutely.
You know, and the American politicians just, we're not interested in renewable energy. Why should we be interested in that? So the solar panels are made in China, and the batteries, 56% of this article shows 92% of batteries made in the world are made in Asia, and then the majority of them are made in China. Okay, Tesla is in the other 8%. What does that tell you? Huh. Yeah. Well, actually,
I think we're back to the wrong horse in this race.
Yeah, and it's because we've got a corrupt political system, I think, in which people are putting money into campaigns for political candidates, and the political candidates just feel a need to help out the people who contribute to their campaigns.
And they wouldn't do a thing like that.
No. And, you know, we're talking about people who are patriotic Americans until it comes to the point of getting the money that they need to defeat the other guy in the next election. So
Money talks.
I am
Always has.
Yep. I am tired of it.
Let's move along. We got a picture here of some emperor penguins. I love these guys.
Yeah, they're great. They're great. I think everybody loves emperor penguins. Penguin, by the way, is a thought to be, it might not be, but it's thought to be a word that comes from Welsh.
Is that so?
Yeah, and it would mean white head. And of course, none of these guys has a white head. But nevertheless, these are
the big guys. These are the emperor penguins. Yeah.
That's right. And this is from CNN.
And I quote, Antarctica's emperor penguins at risk of extinction due to the climate crisis. Oh, what a shame.
Well, this is not good. Global warming is melting the sea ice, and Antarctica's emperor penguins depend on it for their survival. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service now categorizes the species as threatened. The agency lists, quote, imperiled species as endangered or threatened, regardless of their country of origin, end quote. And now, of course, the emperor penguins are, I don't know that they are considered to have a country of origin, but they live on Antarctica, and they depend on the ice to make a living.
Well, I'm not going to see it, but it makes me sad to even think about it.
Well, you know,
they're majestic birds, really.
They are. And have you ever seen a picture of one of these things swimming underwater?
I'm sure I have, but what are you going to say about it?
Unbelievable speed that they swim underwater, and
yeah, they're just pretty streamlined.
Yeah, and they use their wings to propel themselves underwater, just as though they were.
They're flying.
Yeah, they're flying underwater. Yeah. Okay. More on that?
No, we got a picture coming up. I've seen this picture before, or at least parts of it.
Yes. This is from CNN.
The architect helping sinking cities fight flooding.
Yeah, when floods devastated Bangkok over a decade ago, Thai landscape architect Kochakorn Vorakom became determined to help her sinking homeland fight this deadly climate threat. The central question she focuses on is, quote, how are we going to live with the water and without fear, end quote. And she's been designing ways for cities to operate differently, you know?
Well, that's a picture, I think, of one of her work as a planned development.
That's right. And that thing that you see in the middle that looks like a park.
Well, it sort of is a park, but
it's the roof of a building. With all that water, with all those walkways, with all the vegetation that's growing.
Absolutely, that's correct. It's a building. That's
right. And it's almost hard to figure out where it ends and all the vegetation on the ground begins. But nevertheless, you know, there's this article has several pictures of.
It's a building with a park on its roof.
Yeah. Yeah, and it has several pictures of things that she has designed.
Oh, she knows what she's doing for sure.
Well, I think she does. Yeah. And so do you have more on that?
Now let's move on to the next.
Okay. The next one, we have a picture of the rainforest and the Amazon River with a rainforest and a couple of little buildings that look like somebody's home on the edge of the river.
A couple of little huts on the river.
Yep, and this is from CNN.
Well, let's see if I can scroll down. Here we go. Lula da Silva will return to Brazil's presidency in a stunning comeback.
Yeah.
So this is important.
It is. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva was elected the next president of Brazil in a stunning comeback following a tight runoff race. His victory heralds a political about-face for Latin America's largest country, and environmentalists hope that it will make Brazil a climate leader.
Well, Brazil's got the potential.
Yes, it does.
If they do it properly, they've got the potential.
But the President Bolsonaro, who is the man elected out of office, was supposed to be protecting the rainforest in Brazil, and he was not.
He was not. No, he was selling it down the river.
Yeah, and people who were
literally and figuratively.
Yeah, people who were illegally logging, people who were illegally mining, people who were doing all kinds of things, building farms where they weren't supposed to. They were just destroying the Amazon, and hopefully this Lula da Silva is going to be able to stop that. We'll have to see how things develop. But
well, the Amazon is a big worldwide resource.
Yes.
And what happens there is going to be felt by everybody.
That's right. That is right. Yeah.
Let's move along here. We got a picture of, that's not Manhattan, guys. That's Singapore.
That is Singapore.
Kind of shakes you up, doesn't it?
Well, if I went looking for pictures of Singapore, and there are all kinds of pictures of Singapore. Most of them are really kind of wild compared to this one, because they've got all kinds of weird buildings there, and they have all kinds of weird shapes. But here is Singapore, and it's nothing like it was when I was a kid.
For sure.
Yeah.
Looks like the tip of Manhattan.
Yes, it does.
Singapore to use low-carbon hydrogen to reach 2050 net zero target.
This is from Hydrogen Fuel News. Singapore announced that it intends to achieve a carbon neutral status by 2050, and that it will use low-carbon hydrogen as a major component in the decarbonization. The country is...
It's so confusing when they talk about low-carbon hydrogen, because hydrogen doesn't have any carbon.
Well, I can explain that. The country is especially vulnerable to the impact of a warming planet. This country, the whole thing is on basically a couple of small islands, and those islands are pretty close to the ocean that surrounds them. And so rising seas is bad news for them. Okay, here's the deal about hydrogen. There's different ways to get hydrogen. And one of them is to strip the carbon out of methane. And in that method, that emits carbon dioxide. And of course, you're going to have methane leaks in that too.
Electrolysis is a preferred way to do it.
Yeah, and then there's another way, which is the opposite extreme. Well, electrolysis. What powers the electrolysis? Is it going to be
green or not?
Yeah, is it going to be coal, natural gas, nuclear, wind, solar? And so you have different shades of hydrogen, and they call it, when they talk about green hydrogen, they're talking about something that is made entirely...
Hydrogen manufactured in a green manner.
That is right. And when they're talking about low carbon hydrogen, they're kind of hinting that they're going to be aiming in the direction of green hydrogen, but they may have to accept not very green hydrogen in the process of doing the shift. So... there it is.
Moving right along.
Okay, we will do that.
Another picture of a school bus.
Yeah, with a sign that says Lion. And the school bus, by the way, is made by a company called Lion. And this is
interesting.
Yeah, and this is from Clean Technica.
School bus has a grill, though. Or at least it looks like it does.
It sure does, doesn't it? Well, sometimes they make things look traditional.
They take a traditional school bus and to convert it to electric, they put the motors in the wheels.
Yeah. Okay, what do you got for a title, Tom?
USA's first vehicle-to-grid export rate for commercial electric vehicles.
A settlement agreement between PG&E and Vehicle-to-Grid Integration Council, Electrify America LLC, and the California Public Utilities Commission is to establish the nation's first vehicle-to-grid export compensation mechanism for its commercial EV charging customers.
What does this really mean? I'll answer that question.
Oh, thank you.
The V2G export rate will provide upfront incentives to help commercial customers offset fleet costs. This will allow fleet vehicles to sell power back to the grid during peak energy demand.
And we've talked about that earlier today. The idea that
Yes, we have.
the truck, the whatever, can send its power to the grid, and the grid can accept it. So it will the vehicle gets powered when the grid has too much electricity, and it gives power back when the grid doesn't have enough. What this
It kind of evens things out, doesn't it?
It sure does. One of the things that's beautiful about this, from the point of view of a utility, is that the utility is getting the service of a battery, and it doesn't have to pay the
They don't
upfront.
have to buy it.
They don't have to buy the battery. So, there's a great deal of benefit for the owners of the vehicles. There's also a great deal of benefit for the utilities. And
That's happening right here in Vermont.
yeah, it is. So
Well, let's move along.
we're up to Tuesday, November 1st. In our reports, we have a picture of a blue door.
Looks purple to me.
Does it? Well, I'm vaguely colorblind, and so I just use the simplest term.
The article says it's a blue front door, but it just looks purple to me.
Okay.
And there's a saguaro there, so that's interesting. It's not in Vermont.
Well, Tom,
It's in Tucson.
Yeah, I actually went and looked for a picture of Tucson, and I found that some photographer who put photos up at Unsplash had put up photo after photo after photo of doors in Tucson that had various kinds of desert plants growing next to them.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it's just a huge number. Well, I don't know what a huge number is, but there were a lot of these doors. And this, by the way, is from the BBC.
How Tucson, Arizona is facing up to a 1,200-year drought. Wow.
Yeah, and that means the worst drought in 1,200 years. But there's hope. Tucson is a desert city where barely 12 inches of rain falls in an average year. Over the past 15 years or so, thousands of its residents have turned to rainwater harvesting. They joined the city's drive to embrace the practice as part of its suite of water conservation initiatives. And, as I think about droughts, I think about an article that I read many, many years ago about, I think it was a monastery. It might have been a community in the Sinai. And, they're out in the middle of a desert. And all these people are living in a relatively small space. And they've got cisterns that get filled with water every time it rains.
They're collecting rainwater.
Exactly. These people are doing the same thing. Other people in other places are doing the same thing. In fact, we collect rainwater at home here in Brattleboro and use it for various purposes in the garden and so forth, because it's cheaper than buying a long hose, and for a bunch of other reasons. But yeah, and the people of Tucson are doing something that shows that people in a desert, even in the droughts that we've been seeing, have got ways to get water and have it be useful for them. So that's what it is.
Well, let's move along. We've got a picture of some young plants.
Young tomatoes, I believe. There we go.
Industrial agriculture needs to be replaced by agroecology soon.
Yes, this is.
I'll say that again because that's important.
Okay, do it.
Industrial agriculture needs to be replaced by agroecology soon.
Right. The agricultural sector accounts for nearly 25% of all emissions. I believe what they're talking about here is in the United States. But
I think so.
Agroecology is a method of farming with nature rather than against it, using ecological principles for agricultural systems. The method promotes diversity, resilience, circularity, social values, and cultural practices. Circularity means that, the things that you've got in the system stay in the system. And so, the soil is kept
Well, we've talked about
fertile.
this several times on the show. We just
Yes.
haven't used the word agroecology.
Yeah. We haven't, I don't think we've seen that particular word before.
I don't think so.
But it's something that we're seeing more and more attention going to. I'm thinking of, I forget, I think it's Peter Andrews in Australia who developed this system of slowing down the advance of water through the streams, across the countryside and so forth. And of course, this is being done by permaculturalists in other ways all over the world. We have similar things underway in Africa. There's a belt of 3,000 miles long of countries that are actively working to stop the southward advance of the Sahara. And we've got people really talking seriously about greening the Sahara. And if you start doing these things, you can draw down carbon dioxide fairly quickly out of the atmosphere. So,
well, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Well, let's move along.
Okay.
We got a picture of a funny-looking thing. Looks like a car being, I don't know, what are they doing to that car?
Tying it up.
It's tying it up. Looks like they're charging it.
Aha! I think you figured it out, Tom. This is from Clean Technica. And by the way, Ed Harvey is not a relative of mine, as far as I know. He's the guy who took the picture.
Took the picture. How about that?
Yeah.
European Parliament moves to mandate EVs by 2035.
Right.
Wow.
The EU Parliament agreed to set rules that will see an increase in the number of recharging and alternative refueling stations for cars, trucks, trains, and planes. Isn't that interesting? This is part of the, quote, Fit for 55 in 2030 package, end quote, which plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% come 2030.
Well, it's happening, and it's happening because of the economy.
And the Russian invasion of Ukraine also.
Well, that's a minor thing. I mean, basically, it's the economics.
Yes, that's
or to
right.
paraphrase Bill Clinton, it's the economics, stupid.
Yes, that's right. So there you've got it. They have been motivated by the war in Ukraine, but the economics is getting very seriously in favor of
absolutely
renewable energy. So
money talks.
Yeah. So
let's move along here. We got a picture of some smokestacks, or are they? Yeah, are they? Is that smoke or is that that looks like water?
Well, it looks like steam, and I think the reason is because it is steam. Those are stacks, and that is the emissions from the combustion. But in this case, it's natural gas. And natural gas doesn't give off a lot of smoke, but it does give off a lot of steam. And that steam condenses in the air. And
I think that's what we're looking at there.
I think it is. This is from
it says, and I quote, natural gas power plants begin their inevitable decline. Wow.
Yeah, this again refers to this is the
economics, stupid.
Yeah, this is from a publication called The Street. Natural gas-fired power plants are expected to provide 38% of the U.S. electricity in 2022, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration.
This is 2022.
That's right. So they're saying when the accounting is done for this year, it'll be 38%. Though nearly a net 6,900 megawatts of capacity will be added this year, natural gas is expected to be 36% of the power mix in 2023. So we're expecting to see 38% this year and 36% next year. Why? Well, it's because renewable energy is being installed about 25 times as fast as natural gas. And of course, why is that, Tom? I bet you can tell me.
The bottom line is you don't have to pay for the fuel.
Yeah, there you go. It's the economics, stupid. Not that you're stupid, but you know. That's where we are. And this stuff is natural gas is expensive. The price goes up, the price goes down. Yeah, sometimes, like earlier in the week, the price of natural gas went negative in Europe, as we have already said, and it also went negative in Texas. But
what we're dealing with here is a lot of the sources of fuel have been cornered by large companies.
That's true. Yeah.
And they own the fuel. They want to sell it. They've invested in it. They want to sell it.
They don't want They don't want to lose the money that they've invested in.
Bingo.
Stranded assets is the thing that they're worried about, and they don't want to have stranded assets. It's very difficult for them to face the fact that they would have to face their shareholders and say, yeah, we lost X amount of money last year because we had to shut down power plants before the end of their lives, or whatever it is.
Well, little by little, they seem to be coming around.
Yeah, and every once in a while when we're talking about that, I think about a coal-fired power plant I think it was in Belgium, that shut down when it was 18 months old. That thing was so far ahead of its life expectancy for closure.
But it wasn't making money.
It couldn't make money, exactly. And everybody in Europe has been putting in much cheaper ways to make electricity. So that coal plant...
Particularly the Germans are way ahead of the game.
So the coal plant was a bad investment.
I think so.
And a lot of people who are investing in energy are saying, okay, natural gas is a bad investment. And by the way, some people are saying, yeah, and nuclear is a bad investment. And certainly nobody has been investing in coal for a long time. So...
Well, it doesn't pay.
I don't think we've had a coal plant built in the United States in the last 8 years. So it's basically...
Was it the U.S. where they planned one like about eight or 10 years ago, and they haven't even broken ground yet?
For what? For what?
Coal-fired plant?
I don't know. I don't think, if they haven't broken ground by now, they're not going to. The Energy Information Administration publishes material, maybe it's FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. One of those two organizations publishes every month information on what they see coming up as installations. And natural gas has basically fallen off a cliff. It's not as low as 10%, but it's less than 20% of what it was 5 years ago. And
like I said in the article above, we're going to start paying us to take it.
Yeah, but don't invest based on the idea that'll happen, because it's not a good investment.
Well, let's visit the Ukraine here. There's a nice picture of a bombed-out apartment house. Yeah,
well, it's a sad picture of a bombed-out apartment house. I think we may have seen that picture before, but this is from CNN. I hate it when you come home and discover that somebody's run a cruise missile into your apartment.
Yeah, it kind of messes up your day, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Okay, what have you got for a title?
Ukrainians are dreading the darkest winter as Russia takes aim at the power grid.
Well, this is discouraging, but it's kind of to be expected. As the weather gets colder, millions of Ukrainians are trying to prepare for what they know will be an extremely difficult winter. Ukrainian government said in July that over 800,000 homes had been damaged or destroyed in the war. Now, Russia is bombing the power plants. The Russians seem to think that they're going to win this war by making life as miserable as possible for the Ukrainians. And so that picture that you see there is a picture of what happened when a cruise missile or a bomb of some kind hit an apartment house. And the Russians have been bombing. I've seen pictures where it's like you look down a street with apartment houses, and every single one has burned or been blown up. And the Russians are bombing schools and theaters, and maternity wards in hospitals have been hit.
It's hard to figure out why.
They wanted they believe that they can win a war by terrorizing the occupants. But the thing is, the Ukrainians have been bombing tanks and missile launchers and air installations and ships, warships. The Russian, and they're taking out the Russian military infrastructure, where the Russians are taking out civilian infrastructure. Civilian infrastructure doesn't fight back. So the result of that is the Ukrainians are able to defend themselves, and the Russians are giving up their defense. But they're just creating a lot of misery in the process. And
that's for sure.
This is, I think it's fair to say that this is really an inexcusable way to run a war. Not that there was any excuse for this war to begin with. I mean, Vladimir Putin said that the excuse for the war was that Ukraine was being run by Nazis. And, you know.
It's probably true.
Well, but you know, you look at the president of Ukraine, and he's Jewish. His family lost a lot of people to the Nazis during the Second World War. He doesn't have any love of the Nazis. There is a very small number of people in the Ukraine who are Nazis. That I think is true. There's Nazis in the United States. There's Nazis in the UK. There's probably Nazis in Russia, although they wouldn't raise their heads and say I'm a Nazi. But you know, we're that kind of excuse is just okay. Vladimir Putin's excuse is inexcusable. How about that?
Sounds like a good explanation.
Now, what we've got is a picture of some very green batteries. Let me put that up so people can see it.
There we go. Yeah, I'm looking at them.
Yeah,
pretty good sized batteries.
They are. This is from Renews, and what do you have for a title?
EDF, which is a company.
Yeah.
EDF Renewables is the name of the company, really.
Yeah.
And it turns solid for a 50 megawatt battery. That's a good sized battery.
It's good size, but it's not world record breaking. But let me read the synopsis. EDF Renewables UK has started construction of a 50 megawatt battery site at Energy Super Hub Coventry. I've been in Coventry, like Coventry. The 50 megawatt, 100 megawatt hour battery will help support the integration of renewables in the UK by storing energy when the supply is abundant and discharging it when the supply is lower. Now, this is not what I would call a remarkable story. The story here is that this is happening all over the world, and this is not an especially large battery that this article is about. It's just one of many, and these.
Well, it's something that's making sense.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Buy low, sell high.
That's right, and buy renewable energy that is coming to market at perhaps 2 cents per kilowatt hour, and then when the demand exceeds the supply, you got it to sell. Yeah, you've got it to sell at a much higher rate. And, you know, people don't realize this. Almost everybody in Brattleboro realizes that 7 miles down the river, there is what's left of the old Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant. But about 15 or 20 miles farther down the river, there's the Northfield Mountain Power Station, which was built at exactly the same time as the pumped storage. And the idea was the Vermont Yankee nuclear plant was actually going to be a little bit bigger than demand needed, which is a very unusual thing to have happen for a baseload power plant. So somebody figured out that they could do pumped storage in Northfield. Pumped storage
and make a little money doing it.
Pumped storage was not a new technology. At that point, it was probably over 50 years old in the United States. But you pump the water to when there's excess electricity, you pump the water to the top of the mountain, and when
you're pumping that hill.
Yeah, you pump it uphill. And then when you need it, you run it downhill, and you run what is really a kind of normal power station. And that thing that was on top of the Northfield Mountain Station was, at that time, it had the biggest turbines in the United States.
Did it?
Yeah, absolutely it did. Now it's not particularly big, but nevertheless, there's many ways of storing electricity, and that pumped storage system is still used. Vermont Yankee closed, but now it's storing electricity that just comes in from the grid. And as the grid goes more and more in the direction of being renewably powered, the electricity from that pumped storage facility is going more and more in the direction of being.
Well, the article says it well. The UK is storing energy when the supply is abundant and discharging when the supply is lower.
Right, and that means that
High low, so high.
Exactly, that's what they're doing. And I remember the pumped storage facility, because we were living, I've spent much of my life living in this area, and we were living in the area when that pumped storage facility opened up. And I remember that it was, at that time, considered to be marginally successful. It was making money, but not a lot. And today, I think maybe it's making more money, but nevertheless, it is one of many ways. You've talked, Tom, about a system out in the western part of Vermont, or in New York, where they have a flywheel.
Yes, absolutely. It's right on the border between New York and Massachusetts, I guess.
Okay, all right.
But it's a flywheel, absolutely.
Yeah, and in the old paradigm, the advantage of that flywheel was you couldn't store a lot of power there, but you when you needed power, you got it very fast.
It was instantly there.
Yeah, and these batteries that they're using today are, I think, faster than the flywheels, and they just give superior electricity supply to back up renewable energy. So there you've got it.
Well, these batteries didn't exist then. I mean, there's been more progress in the last 10 years in batteries than there ever was total before that.
Yes. So, Tom, we are at the fini